Okay, so we are recording. Hi and welcome everyone to the next in our series of career talks from WSET School London. We are very excited to have an excellent panel for you to experience tonight. So I'm not going to talk too much. Purely from a housekeeping side, I just want to let you know that there is a Q&A button. So if you have any questions as we're going along, please do pop them in there. We will be addressing questions at the end. Just feel free to put them in whenever you're ready. There's also a chat if you just want to say hi or share any other thoughts, you're more than welcome to. This session is being recorded, so if you miss any bits, the recording will be available on our website and on YouTube from tomorrow. That is it from me. I'm going to let Megs get straight to it. Thanks, Megs.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, I'm just too keen to get involved. Bara and I am like, let me go. We're joined by a wonderful set of panelists, hugely talented. I'm not going to take away anyone's thunder. I'm going to let everyone speak for themselves. My name is Mags. I work in the UK. I import wines, teach classes at WSET, which is one of the world's flagship wine spirits and sake, and at some point beer education provider. As mentioned, ship wines in, sell wines to the on-trade, off-trade, a little bit to supermarkets as well. And today we are talking, what we do. Importing, logistics, shipping, all the stuff that keeps us up at night to make sure that you have your favorite tipple at your favorite bar, restaurant, or supermarket. I'm joined by Regine Lee and Sukhinder Singh. Hi. If we just kind of go around, Regine, I don't want to say anything about anyone because I generally tend to kind of go off and introduce everyone, and then I come back to you and say, would you introduce yourself? And, well, you said everything. So, Regine, if you were kind enough to start and just give us a little bit of flavor, who you are, what do you do, where do you work?
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just a little bit of background about me. I currently live in London, based in the UK, but as you can probably tell, I'm American, originally from California. So in terms of my overall experience, I've had a variety of different roles outside the wine industry and in the wine industry. Started off my career after university doing management consulting, which encompassed a lot of different projects from many different companies, finance, marketing, healthcare. Also did some logistics for a golf club supply company. So there you go. And then I moved to the wine industry and the UK in 2010. And from there, I've worked at WSET, and I currently now work at Liberty Wines, and I'm the head of operations there. So I look after all the end-to-end logistics teams, from shipping wine to getting it in, warehousing it in the UK, distributing it to the UK and Ireland, as well as our customer services team that does the order fulfillment and issue resolution. And I also have my MW. So in terms of my wine education, I passed my MW in 2018. And then I also was a WSET diploma graduate in 2013. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Regine. And thank you for holding back. If you give away everything in the introduction, then we have nothing else to chat about. Sukhinder, would you be kind enough to tell us?
Sure. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. Okay, so my name is Sukhinder Singh. I'm one of the co-founders of the Whiskey Exchange and Specialty Drinks. We also have a couple of sister companies, including specialty brands. So we touch every single point of the spirits industry. A little bit different to Regine, who is more wine, we're spirits. So we have the retail arm, which is the Whiskey Exchange. We have 3 shops in London. We have a very, very important e-commerce platform. We supply on-trade, hotels, bars, restaurants. We import from many different countries around the world. We mainly buy from UK distributors, but we also, to support that, bring in exclusive products from around the world, literally, every country you can think of. And also support my sister company, Specialty Brands, who are an import distributor. So they distribute about 35, 40 brands around the UK to shops and other wholesalers. So we started the business ideally, sorry, I've been in the business pretty much all my life. My parents were the first Indian family in the UK to open a drink shop. That was close to 50 years ago. So I've grown up in the business. I've literally touched every point, every type of job you can think of in the drinks industry. When we started the Whiskey Exchange 21 years ago, there was just two of us, myself and my brother. We answered the phones, we placed the orders, we put the bottles on the shelf, we packed the orders, we took them to the post office to ship out, we called the couriers to come and collect, we answered the phones, we did absolutely everything. So I've touched every part of the business. I think the thing I'd say to start with is, logistics, distribution is the backbone of every business. I think that's the key. It's nice to see a website. It's nice to walk into a shop, restaurants, bars, just, get deliveries day in, day out, week in, week out, usually with a very nice delivery driver, but nobody really thinks how complicated that whole process is. And, it's a bit of a beast on its own. Ordering and buying is has its own challenges, but the actual, import distribution is a completely different beast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sukhinder. I mean, as you were talking about logistics, Regina and I were kind of viciously nodding in the background because we just kind of understand what a monster that is. Because if you think from a consumer's point of view, you jump onto a slick website, you click 2 or 3 buttons, add them to your cart, you put in your details, your card details, and hit send. And from the moment that email kind of fires back and goes to an inbox, whatever it might be, all the wonderful logistic elves go to work. Someone picks that up, gets in touch with the, with the warehouse and so on. And so many things happen in the background. And, the world has moved in such a fast pace that I remember certainly in my lifetime being younger and placing an order for something and having to wait for a week for it to arrive. And we now live in a world where people click an order, and we've got same day delivery. We've got, next day delivery was a huge thing. And now if you order before 10 in the morning, it arrives the same day. But there's so much pressure being put on, the back office, making sure that it gets packed. And of course, we work with, with beers and spirits, which come in a fragile case, which throws in another, a fragile container, which throws in another spanner in the works. So yes, we couldn't agree more. Regine, if we come back to you, really, really interesting career so far. I picked up, running or supplying or running logistics for a golf club or something, a golf club manufacturer. Yeah. How did you make that switch from that to the wine industry? What was the eureka moment? How did you what influenced that decision?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, I joined the wine industry after doing management consulting because I was passionate about wine. I really wanted to join an industry where I felt akin to the people and enjoyed what I did and the end result of that. So really my career kind of started from that point. I was really interested in being in wine. And my first role in the wine industry was in the customer services team at Liberty Wines, handling customer orders as they came in by email and the phone and doing delivery issue resolution, being on the ground, starting from scratch. But yeah, I think like over the course of my career, I tapped into the analytical skills that I built in my consulting days. When I talked about the golf club company, it's Callaway Golf. So they do manufacturing of golf clubs and bags and balls. Yeah, everyone knows Callaway if you're a keen golfer. But that project really was about helping them be more efficient with their inventory management. How do you do just-in-time production of goods so you don't have goods already made sitting on the shop floor, costing you money, tying up cash flow. And from then I was really interested in logistics, and I had a variety of different jobs after that, but I kind of got drawn back into logistics a little bit further along in my career. Primarily, I think, because I enjoy things that are analytical and entailed a lot of problem solving and having a real tangible impact on the business.
Fab, thank you so much. I mean, what I've picked up from both of you is that really starting from the ground up. And I couldn't, like myself, I started working, my first foray into the wine industry, the wines and spirits industry was, I was a shop attendant at Waitrose and I stocked shelves. And I couldn't, there's such value in doing that, in kind of touching the goods and in talking to people. You build communication skills, you build, like, as you mentioned, problem solving skills, inventory skills, because I was essentially running a shop within a shop. You're making sure that your top selling lines are always in stock. If you've got your top 10 selling lines, I need to always make sure those are in stock. I need to make sure that I'm not carrying stuff with slow moving lines. And there's no replacement for that. There's no substitute for that experience. You kind of have to go into the trenches and do it. Doesn't matter if you end up, I tend to find out that, people who sit in CEO roles or board roles who have that experience think about the industry, the trade, whether it's wines or spirits, completely differently from people who haven't done that, because they understand what the actual, base customer needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, being on the ground doing like customer service was an amazing training ground for being in the wine industry, because you're talking to customers directly, you know their needs, you know their wants. If problems happen, you know why they happen, or you learn why, and it all is like this nexus where kind of comes into customer services and it goes on from there. So absolutely, starting from the ground up is really important. It gives you such a good insight into how the wine industry works.
Fantastic. So Kinder, if we may switch to you, sir. I mean, mentioning kind of being in the spirits industry all your life, was there ever a doubt? Did you ever think of doing something else, or was it kind of always spirits? Because it's always so tempting, just slide straight into the family business. But were there, other distractions which might have caught your attention?
Mags, I was never going to join this business. I saw my parents work 7 days a week, very long hours running a shop or shops, and I never ever wanted to join the business. So after university, I sort of came back. I couldn't get a job. I found it difficult to get a job. I studied chartered surveying, and when I finished, which was in '89. The UK had its biggest property crash. So who wanted to employ a chartered surveyor? Nobody. Got it? So I thought, you know what? Let me help out for a year in the shops, just give my parents a bit of rest. Let me play about, see how I can improve the business. I did that for a year. I applied again. I still couldn't get a job. Nothing had changed. And you know what? I started enjoying it. I changed so many things. The nice thing was, it's like you guys said, you're touching, you're starting at the bottom, you're stacking shelves, you're touching the beers, you're touching the wines, you're touching the spirits, you're learning about the product, you're talking to customers. It's the best training ground possible. Even though now, we are a pretty decent sized company, got 200 plus staff. The thing is, when it comes to logistics, I'm still a part of that team, because I can touch all the point. I can bring all the different sides of the business together and try and tie them up, because that's where, the efficiencies come in. That's where I guess a normal person might not see a different side of it. They just think I got to do A to B, but A to B might affect X to Z, somewhere else. Yeah. And it's just tying all that together. And I think that's the part I find really interesting. It's become now more of a science than just, it's like moving boxes. The thing is, remember we do, as I said, we do all sides of the business. We do online, we do deliveries to on-trade, which in our own vehicles. We do deliveries, to shops by the pallet. So, we're doing everything. We're box pushing thousands of parcels thousands of parcels a day, online orders through courier. We're doing our pick, pack, dispatch of on-trade orders, which is, a bottle of this, 5 bottles of this, 10 bottles of this, 20 cases of this, completely mixed. Then we're selling pallets to other people.
And bottles to someone else.
Absolutely. So we're trying to just make sure everything streamlines into one.
Yeah, And I think it gives you, having worked kind of your way from the ground up, it gives you a really bird's eye view of the business, which you might not have, kind of holistic view. And you mentioned a fantastic point there, Sukinda, about kind of A to B, affecting X, Y, and Z. I had a conversation with a chap yesterday in the business, and I said, I feel sometimes like an air traffic controller, right? Where you've got to make sure this perfectly lands at the perfect time when this plane is taking off. So this, otherwise you end up with too much stock, which is tying down cash flow, and you then don't have the cash to go out and buy this amazing product that you found. So you have to make sure everything's kind of dovetails and streamlines to the next. And it's wonderfully, wonderfully exciting if you've got that kind of the mind for it. Regine, if I may come back to you, you mentioned doing, running everything from on-trade, off-trade, which you both spoke. How involved are you with that process? Are you kind of running teams, or do you kind of get down and dirty in the trenches and make, how involved are you with that logistics process?
Yeah, both actually. So just a background on my company, I work for Liberty Wines. We are a wine importer distributor based in the UK. And we serve the business channel. So we're B2B. And we have a variety of different customers, the on-trade, off-trade, multiple retailers, wine brokers, etc. And yeah, to your question, what do I do? So I do manage all of our teams who handle the end-to-end logistics. I make sure things are flowing well between all of them, that there's coordination points between them, because as Sukinder said, change one thing here with the supply, it affects customer services and inventory and stock down the line. And I do get my, hands dirty and sort out things logistically. I was just in the warehouse. So we have a duty paid warehouse in London where our head office is based. And I was there the other week digging through pallets of wine for damaged label stock and pulling stuff out, selling some here, selling others there. So yeah, you get sort of both sides of it, kind of being the puppet master, I suppose, in some ways, but also
and the puppet at the same time.
pulling out like dusty pallets and scrabbling around some wine boxes. That's, you get it all. So, but it's fantastic. It's really fun. You have a tangible outcome of what you do, and I think that's really satisfying. And if you think about the wine industry and the core of it, I mean, how much wine do you personally, or does anyone personally buy direct from the producer? X seller, you go to the tasting room, you buy a few cases. Like, how much do you buy wine that way versus how much do you buy wine from a shop, from a restaurant, from a supermarket, et cetera? And you can see why logistics is such an important part. We are trying to get the product from the producer to you in the ways that you normally buy things. It's complicated, but it's fun too. So.
If I may stick with you before kind of going down, before moving to Skinder, what skill set would you say anyone who's looking to get into that role, who's looking to kind of plug themselves and become a logistics guru, what skill set would you think that they need to have?
Yeah, I think one is they have to be a good problem solver, because you can plan the perfect set up logistically, or the perfect types of shipments from your producers to your home country or your country of origin, and you can plan all this stuff, but stuff happens and you have no control over it. And so you have to be good at thinking on your feet, thinking how you can resolve issues quickly and efficiently, and get various people on board to do that. So I think problem solving, number one. Number two, you have to have an analytical kind of mindset, so be comfortable with numbers and looking at figures. With logistics, we're constantly looking at the metrics that measure our efficiency and costs. So having a kind of a brain for that, or an interest in that, is really good. And then third, I think, people skills, which is always important, because you're relying on so many different people to get your wines to your end customer, that you have to be able to work with people proactively, collaboratively, and get them on board. And this is especially true for third-party companies doing deliveries for you, for example. You have to be a good negotiator, be hard, get what you need out of them at a good price, good rates. But you also have to be their partner as well, and tell them that you are in the same boat together. So whatever issues may arise, you can work collaboratively with them to solve it.
It's such a tricky balance to strike, isn't it, in terms of kind of negotiating with third parties, just that last point you made. Because yes, we have come across so many things where either myself or someone with the business wants to kind of drop the hammer on them, because you smashed my case of wine or you broke my pallet of wine. But then you think, I'm not going to stop using you. So we have to solve this problem, and I need to make sure that you're aware that I'm not happy with the situation. But at the same time, know that we're going to be working together for the next 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 years. So there's no point in solving the entire relationship over one case of wine. Yes, I want a refund, but at the same time, we need to continue to work together. So Kinder, so if we may come to you on that same point, if you were recruiting someone to join your logistics team, what kind of person, would you be looking for? What kind of telltale signs, what kind of skill sets would you be looking for?
I think Regine absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think you do have to be a problem solver. You have to be analytical. The thing is, you're multitasking so much. Yeah. I think if you look at our industry, I'm guessing Regine's probably dealing with maybe 500-600 wine suppliers, maybe more. Yeah. We have got currently 10,000 lines in operation at any one time. Yeah. So you have to be able to multitask. I guess also when you're talking about shipping, we've got a very, how can we put it? It's a very expensive commodity. It's a very expensive product, especially spirits. The duty element is so high. The risks around it are very, very complicated. And it's a product which is high in demand of thefts. So we've got to look at all that. You've got to look at specialist shippers. You can't just go to any Tom, Dick, and Harry. And you know what? You need to build the relationships with these guys. You've got to make sure when a problem happens, you've got that relationship to discuss it and solve the problem, because you want that relationship to go a long time. So these things are really, really important.
Absolutely. Interesting. Yeah, I was just thinking on that point you made about having 10,000 SKUs in rotation. If we may kind of dive into it a little bit more in detail, how do you kind of go about identifying a new product, and what steps does it have to go through from, I tasted this amazing spirit from, I don't know, from Kenya, or from, we've got some fantastic spirits coming out of East Asia or something like that. How do you go from that to, we now supply this product? What's the slowest that could take, and what's the fastest that could take?
Okay, the easiest scenario, of course, is you have a UK distributor. They come and present the product to you. You choose, you try it. Liquid, of course, is very, very important, because that's what we're buying, liquid. So you choose it, you decide, you set up an account. If you don't have one, you have to do due diligence today. Customs and excise are so strict. HMRC are so strict, which is the government bodies, because again, it's alcohol. Has it come into the UK through the right channels? Has duty been paid on it? If it's spirits, does it have a duty stamp? There's so many of these elements. So the UK side is actually a little bit simpler. When you're shipping from abroad, that's when the complications happen, Max. The thing is, look, if you're bringing in one product, honestly, I would say to you, unless you're going to sell a lot of stock. Yeah. If we're talking about spirits, you're talking about, I cannot buy from a supplier abroad unless I bring in at least a pallet. A pallet is about 100 cases, 600 bottles. Yeah. Now to be able to sell 600 bottles of one line, is quite difficult. Unless it's a superstar product, that this is just going to rock. Or then, maybe they've got a number of different SKUs. So they've got like 6 or 7 different lines. And you say, okay, I'll buy, 20 cases of each to get your order. That might be feasible. But then you're looking at, even shipping a pallet can be very costly. Where is it? Which part of the country is it? Let's take the USA, for example. Yeah. Let's say it's sitting in the middle of USA. Now you've got two issues, yeah? One is the logistics from getting it from the distillery or the brand owner to port.
Yeah.
And then the second is shipping it from port all the way to the UK. Yeah. Now you would think, how expensive could it be to move a pallet of whiskey, spirits, call it whatever you like, yeah? Now, in the UK, to move a pallet from, let's say, Scotland to London, it'll cost me £100, okay? To move a pallet from the middle of the USA to the port could cost you $500 for one pallet. Now, all of a sudden, the cost of that product has gone up so much.
Significantly,
You see my point? So I think where, again, the analytical mind comes into it, you've got to work with your, your buying team, your supply chain team to say, what is the end cost going to be? You've got your internal cost, you've got your shipping cost, you've got your clearance costs, because once those goods arrive to port, you have to customs clear them. You then have to organize the logistics to get them from port into a bonded warehouse. You have to pay the bonded warehouse charges, receiving goods. You'll have to pay storage charges over a long period. You have to pay charges to duty stamp the goods if they're spirits. So the UK rule is it has to be over 30% alcohol and 35 cl, a bottle which is over 35 cl, and then your duty stamps. You have to pay the bond for the duty stamps to, apply those. You have to be registered for duty stamps. So you understand, all of a sudden, something which you think, you know what, let's say it's cost us in America £10 a bottle. By the time you've actually just added the basic cost of shipping, manhandling, customs clearance, it could be £2 to £3 a bottle. That's a lot. That's 30% of your base cost. And then you have to pay the duties on top. Yeah. So, sometimes people think, oh, in America, this product is really cheap. And it's very expensive. That what people don't realize is when you're bringing in a very small quantity, it actually sometimes does not make sense. It really doesn't make sense.
That's so interesting. So interesting. Regine, anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that. I mean, there's so much complexity. There's so many layers of, process and movement that goes into it. So yeah, it is exciting, but it is complicated. It involves multitasking. Many balls are in the air at once, and you have to juggle all of them.
And a lot of those costs, Sukinda, just to come back to you, a lot of those costs are payable upfront. A lot of those costs, and you got to pay them before you've ever sold a single product. For example, the duty, right? You got to pay that. Your warehouse. Sometimes you might even, more often than not, you have a standing order with them where the cost is just coming up. So not only do you have to deal with endless amount of spreadsheets, which I'm sure you two have an abundance of at any one time. But yes, you also have to think about it from a cash flow point of view, which can be extremely, extremely challenging.
Yeah. I was going to say another point to add is, of course, I'm sure you have the same, Regine, but I get a lot of calls from people saying, I would love to import a brand, and can you give me some advice? And, for me, it's asking a number of questions. One is, okay, fine. First is, do you have a bonded warehouse account? Yeah, that's always the beginning point, because you need to import those goods. Then when they come into the UK, because it's alcohol, it needs to come in bonded. It has to go into a bonded warehouse. So do you have a bonded warehouse account? Yeah. First important element, before anything else. The second is, how much product are you looking to sell? Yeah. What is your costs of bringing that product over? We've just been through. And then the next part is, how much will you actually sell in the UK? And how will you distribute it? The next challenge is, it's nationwide distribution. It's local distribution. How will you distribute it to people who order the product from you? Are you going to sell it direct to the shops? Are you going to sell it to wholesalers? Are you going to sell it direct to the bars? You know, how will that work? You know, you can add that some bonded warehouses have a logistics network.
Yes.
So they can do that for you, which is fantastic. But you've got minimum order quantities, otherwise it becomes really expensive again.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So I always say to people, I think if you're bringing in 1 or 2 products, it's going to be a real challenge. You need to work with a company that has already got a network set up so that it becomes, you know, just one product in 100 or 1,000, so that when you're going to sell to a shop or to a customer, they've got a selection of products they can buy, and that's just an extra product. So then, you know, your logistics costs become much cheaper for the shop. They will never be able to buy big quantities of one line. But actually, when you've got a selection of, let's say, 100 products, you can buy, 2-3 bottles of each to get your minimum quantity.
Minimum order, yeah.
You know, so these are the things which are very, very important.
Thank you so much, Sukinder. So much detail packed into that. So thank you so much, Regine. And Sukinder's kind of talked about a lot of the challenges throughout that supply chain process. How are some of the ways which you, in your role, overcome those challenges? You know, moving a pallet of wine from, as mentioned, in the heart of the US, all the way to Liberty's bonded warehouse in London. What are some of the tools in your kind of tool chest to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, Sukinder hit the nail on the head, which is essentially economies of scale. So you have, in order to drive down the cost of logistics, you need to have a certain economy of scale to make it worth it, so that each bottle that you sell on eventually will have a minimal kind of, or minimizing the logistics charge associated with that, if it makes sense. Yeah. And I think there was a Q&A question about how much volume do you need to have before you can start negotiating with third parties, such as a bonded warehouse or a courier, et cetera. And there's no straight answer to that. It's essentially, negotiations all about a balance of power, right? And a lot of logistics companies, of course, are volume driven. So, they'll give you preferential rates if they can, get a certain amount of volume through you, through their business. You can guarantee that, you can forecast that, you will give them X amount of volume to ship or X amount of volume to distribute, and then their rates will start coming down. So, your initial question about how you get a pallet of wine or spirits from the middle of the US to the UK eventually, or wherever your home country is, it's essentially that. You have to negotiate with third parties to consolidate your pallet with other pallets of other stuff. Doesn't even have to be wine, but
wine,
goes to port, gets consolidated with all sorts of things, goes on a shipping container, gets shipped off to your home country, arrives in port, and then you have to decide what you want to do from there in terms of your distribution network. And I think your original question was also asking about what techniques or things that you have to look for. It's really about trying to figure out that right balance, right, between the cost of doing what you want and the flexibility that you require, the rapidness that you need your products, how much product you're shipping. So there's a lot of things going into it. There's no one answer, really.
Thank you so much. To kind of throw in a real life experience at the audience, we bring in some wines from Europe, and we also bring in the same wine from the same producer under a different label, different packaging for multiple retailers. And to throw some numbers at you to kind of understand what we're talking about, if I were to go to the same producer, same region in Europe and pull in a pallet, it cost me about £400, all in, just for, the logistics of bringing that one pallet in. So I'm talking about the actual cost of shipping it over, the customs duties, which we have to now pay as a result of Brexit, which we shall come on to shortly. So you have to pay an export, so all the way to get it to Calais, and then an import from Calais into the UK. So that could be around kind of £300 to £400 per pallet. And that's not drawing into account how much the storage cost is going to be. So roughly speaking, it costs us about 38 to 42 pence per bottle per 6 months. So, if you're going to hold 100,000 bottles, suddenly that starts becoming quite expensive to simply store it. On the flip side, if we are able to get to 20 pallets, 30 pallets for a supermarket or a multiple retailer, that £300 suddenly becomes about £100, sometimes a little bit less, depending on our negotiating power. So, but then you got to also think about it in that, okay, it might be this great romantic idea of bringing in 30 pallets of wine. Do you have a route to market for that? Because it might be cheap, straightforward, cheap upfront to bring it in. But then if it's then going to sit in the warehouse for 2 years before you can move it on, then that's going to tie down your cash for 2 years or whatever that period might be. And B, every day it sits in the warehouse, it incurs some sort of a charge for a storage cost. So it is kind of thinking, as Regine mentioned, that kind of give and take. Where is that sweet spot between, okay, this might not be the best rates for shipping this volume, but I know that with that volume, I'm going to move it on within the next 6 months and it will liquidate some cash for me. And that's that elegant dance which we constantly do. Sukhinder, it's so interesting to have someone who is kind of purely spirits focused, because my hat has totally and utterly been wine. And what are some of the challenges of shipping spirits compared to which other drinks might not have? It might be wines, it might be soft drinks. What are some of the unique challenges to working with, with spirits like you do?
I think there's not much difference because the bonded rules are the same. The paperwork is the same. The logistics companies are the same. I think the biggest difference is insurance value. Yeah. The spirits are much, much more expensive, and the duty element is so much more expensive. So logically, our guarantees or our liabilities become a lot heavier. So apart from that, not really much.
Fab. Regine, having been Miss Callaway Golf to Miss, Shani Montrachet, what are some of the differences you pull apart from, working with wine, which is obviously alcohol and in a bottle, versus, other commodities which you've worked with? What are some of the challenges which you'd say are unique to just, working with wine or moving wine around the world?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. Where do you start?
Tell me.
Yeah, first, I think the thing is with wine is that it changes every vintage, quality level, the volumes that you get from producers based on vintage conditions. So that's actually really tricky because, the supply of wine fluctuates every year. Marlborough in New Zealand had a really, really small vintage. So what does it mean? It means prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
Or there's a limited amount of supply around the world. What does that mean, to supply your customers, and, what is the impact to them on the price, and also the shipping volumes from New Zealand. So that's one, is the variability of wine over time and over each year. And Sukhinder hit the nail on the head as well. It's a high value, fragile product, especially because we, ship the majority of our stuff, of course, in bottles. So how do you deal with fragile handling and the temperature conditions that wine requires? And I think the last is that it's complicated. We're not selling toothpaste or so
the greatest respect to toothpaste.
Demand a lot of variety. Yeah, they demand a lot of variety from around the world. They have different perceptions and loyalties to different producers. It's a sensory product, so you bring that into it as well. It's emotional. And so it has an extra layer of complexity to it, not least also because of what Sukhinder mentioned. As alcohol, it incurs duty charges, and that will be true in the UK, but also around the world. It is a taxable product. Governments want to make money out of alcohol importation. So that's another aspect of it, like how you manage duty declarations and the cost of declaring duty on both counts. So we've got customs duty and excise duty. One is taxes that are charged upon goods from other countries imported into the UK, but also within the UK, you get charged for selling alcohol within our own borders too. So there's many aspects of wine and alcohol that make it a little bit more complex.
One of the other differences, Mags, is that wine usually the quantities are much larger than spirits. I would put it into perspective that if we're moving a pallet, a wine company will usually move a container.
Yeah.
You know, a simple example is you can drink a bottle of wine a night, but you can't drink a bottle of whiskey a night, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So that way,
yeah.
I would say one of the key challenges is really understanding the customs and excise laws, because this bonded element is honestly, you know, you get used to it, but it's very complicated. Because remember, if proper paperwork does not accompany those goods, it will be confiscated at port. Because, you know, these containers, these trucks get spot checks during the way, you know, for are they overweight? What are they carrying? So with bonded goods, you always have to have the correct paperwork. You know, I've come across scenarios where they've accidentally, in the old days, it was a bit more, it was a bit different, where the paperwork was physical. It was actually paper copies which accompanied goods. Today, everything, fortunately, is electronic. Yeah. So as long as, you know, usually there were stickers on the pallets with the number, that the customs officer can just type it into his computer and he knows, yeah, makes sense, looks good. So it's much easier that way. But that is really something which is so important when dealing with goods, you know, and they changed, you know, the rules before Brexit. Remember, we were part of the EU. So how we moved goods between the EU was so different to how we move goods around the rest of the world. Now, the thing is, if we start talking about, you know, Brexit and all that shenanigan, we would, under normal circumstances, the same rules that we have for non-EU should apply now to EU, because we're outside the EU. So it should be exactly the same. But honestly, it's been a nightmare. It's been hell. I know so many haulage companies have stopped shipping alcohol because they don't want the hassle with all the paperwork, with all these regulations. I think the Europeans are just pissed off with us, and they're making our life hell for no reason. You know, everyone expected that after 2 or 3 months, things would settle down. And so far, I haven't found any change. It's still complicated. Now, what we're finding is the most efficient way of doing things today should be you find a specialist haulier. They will pick up from the bonded warehouse in Europe and they will bring it back. They will customs, you know, they'll do the customs checks at port, and they will take them straight to bond. A lot of the European hauliers are saying we will only deliver to port. We will not take it into the UK. So we will take it to Dover. You need to find another haulage company to pick it up from Dover, take it to the bond, wherever you are. And that is honestly very complicated, and that's where things go wrong. That's when problems arise, is because you're breaking that chain, you're dealing with bonded goods, and that is not right. You need a one-stop shop. You know, that's what the key to shipping goods is, a very good, experienced, trustworthy haulier, because they're the ones that are going to make your life easy. They're the ones who are going to make sure
all the paperwork.
If it's a loose pallet, remember what happens with loose pallets, you know? So let's say I give an instruction to my shipper to say, can you please pick this pallet of goods from, let's say, Germany, and bring it back to us. Of course, this haulier, the shipper, will not just go pick that pallet up and bring it back to us. What they will do, they will take that pallet back to their warehouse. They will then consolidate it into a container with other goods. Got it?
Yep.
So that pallet could be sitting in that warehouse for a number of days. And of course, it's prone to theft because it's alcohol. People know alcohol is expensive and they know it's got high duty. So the thing is, the last thing you actually want are bonded goods lying about.
Sitting somewhere. Yeah.
Sitting somewhere. If they are going to sit somewhere, it has to be very secure. And that's why I'm saying a reputable haulier is important, because they'll have cameras in the warehouse. Nobody should be allowed in or out because it's bonded. Only people who work within that organization should be allowed in that bonded warehouse. Haulier, the shippers, when the trucks come, they need to park outside. They're not allowed to go inside. But if you look at badly run warehouses, people are just running wild. They can walk in, they can walk out, they can do whatever. And that's when things, go wrong. We've had scenarios, I'll give you an example. We've had scenarios where, a pallet of goods. Now, believe it or not, a pallet of goods for whiskey, especially single malt whiskeys, a bit, the higher end, could be £100,000 for one pallet.
Ooh, okay.
And and can you imagine it's just disappeared? And you know what? The time it takes to resolve that problem, oh my God. You just don't want that headache on your hands. So it's better to find someone who's going to make sure your life is easy. You understand the logistics, you understand all the regulations, and you make sure everything is communicated. One of the points that Regine made was communication skills. Very important. In your emails to the hauliers, you've got to address every single
as clear
point
as possible.
Yeah. You've got to make sure you tell them this is alcohol. You got to give them the size, the strength. The invoice has to be 100% accurate. There cannot be any mistakes. You've got to add, we have things called commodity codes. You got to make sure the commodity codes are right and relevant for that. If it's wine, that region, it's basically region, you could say, the country and region. All these things are so crucial, so crucial.
Thank you so much, Sukinder. That, again, such a packed with so much detail. Regine, if I might come to you, you talked about kind of problem-solving skills and being analytical, and so, which is, I kind of separate, a logistics mind, a brain for a logistics person from a salesperson. I think they're two vastly different skills. As you can tell, I am more of the sales ilk. I will kick down doors and take names and say, you have to buy, 2 pallets of this. Otherwise, I'm tying myself to your front door. I'll never do that, obviously. But I think that skill set, it's vastly, vastly different from logistics. I know this because I have tried to do logistics bits. And I've ended up having myself, getting myself in such a knot and because you just keep chasing your tails. And if you get one thing wrong, it takes 4 or 5 different things to get it right. And then it's just best to outsource it to someone who thinks that way. So what does a good day look like for you? What does, you go to work and, what does a day when nothing goes wrong? What does a good day look like for you?
I don't know if that actually ever occurs where a day that nothing goes wrong. That would be a golden day. I'd be like, wow, I need to record this and relive it in my dreams. But of course, a good day is a day where every issue is resolvable and the customer is happy at the end of the day. And even if it's not resolvable on the day, you sort it out with the customer, you are clear about your communications, how you're going to solve it, and they're happy in the end that they trust that you're going to do what you're going to do. And I think that's such an important thing about logistics too, especially working in our trade, is that you spend a lot of time, and our salespeople spend a lot of time building up relationships with our customers, sommeliers, buyers at the retailers, et cetera, and we don't want to let them down, so that's what we need to do. We need to focus on that and solve their problems, solve any issues that come up along the way, and do it in a way that allows them to trust that we've got everything at hand.
Yeah, on that point of relationships, that's so key, relationship building skills. And not only the relationship building skills, I think about it as a hunter-farmer kind of thing. The salesperson goes out and does the hunting. But the logistics, the back office, and as Sukinder mentioned, the backbone, those are the people who farm, who make sure that that relationship kind of thrives. It takes an age to build it, but it can be snapped. It can be lost in one bad order, in one bad interaction. So it's absolutely fundamental for anyone who's thinking, going into logistics. You must be able to A, build, and B, maintain relationships. And the challenge with that is you're going into battle knowing that things are going to go wrong. It's just the nature of the beast. It's just the nature of what you do. That you're going into with that mindset of there are going to be things which go wrong, and how do we fix that, and how do we make sure that we don't sully that relationship. Sukinder, if I may swing back to you. I say down because you're on the bottom on the screen. what trends in the spirits market? What are some of the things you're really excited about the kind of next 12 months, the next kind of 5 years or so? What trends are you seeing emerge, and what are the things which kind of you're interested in?
Wow. I think one really exciting category at the moment for us, which I'd like to say we are leading, is rum. I think rum is really gone through, or is going through, a renaissance, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, where it was lost. People felt like it was just an easy spirit, just purely for mixing. Whiskey sits right up there. It's refined. It's luxury. It's classy. And then actually, when you go and try some of these rums, especially the ones which we classify as pure, either the single distillery from great people who really know what to do, a mixture of pot and column still, and they are sipping rums. They mix beautifully, but they're sipping rums. So I think a lot of people have changed. Even I'm talking about brand owners have started changing the way they look at rum in terms of they're comparing it to whiskey. So what they're doing, they're reformulating their recipes to make them a bit more bigger in flavor. You with me? Adding a bit more pot still rum to column still rum, or making 100% pot still rum. Whereas before, in the old days, they were scared of this. They thought people wanted light rum, easy drinking. Whereas now they're saying actually people want flavor. People want something which has got mouthfeel, which is going to be really long, and they can sit there, drink, on its own. So that's one category I think which has been really exciting, and we're really enjoying it. Lots of new producers. Still a very confused category in terms of it's very difficult to regulate. Do you understand? Because rum is sort of produced all over the world. So, you can't have one governing body. Of course, you've got your EU rules, and the UK abides by those, which is predominantly has to be 3 years old. But that's pretty much it. There's new rules which now limit the amount of sugar you can put into rum, which is good within the EU. So before, some rums were being launched and they were just really rich and sweet, with like 50, 60 grams of sugar, which is just too much. The new EU rule is just, I believe it's just come into place, or about to come into effect, that maximum can be 20 grams, which I think is very good. It's a step in the right way. So these things help. So that's good. I think mezcal is pretty cool.
Now we're talking.
I think it's really, really interesting category. I actually thought it would take longer to pick up. I thought it would always be led by the on-trade, by the bar scene, by bartenders, because, when I look back and you look at tequila sits on 2 levels. You've got high-end tequila and low-end tequila. Low-end tequila is just mass, and then the real good tequila is purely bar-led. America, for example, is completely opposite. America, people drink tequila at home like they drink malt whiskey. If you go to someone's house in the US and, they go, can we get you a drink? They will ask you if you'd like a whiskey or a tequila. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And here it's just like, do you want a whiskey, or do you want a gin and tonic or something like that?
Yeah.
I think there's some really exciting spirits. Another category which I've seen it change a lot, especially through COVID, is vermouth.
Now,
vermouth is the most amazing product possible. Of course, everyone thinks vermouth is for mixing, but if you try drinking vermouth on its own, it's absolutely delicious. Just, glass of vermouth in a tumbler, cube of ice, 1 cube of ice, maybe a zest of orange or something like that. Absolutely delicious. Now, the thing is, because when COVID happened, everything went to lockdown, people missed their cocktails. So people were then saying, you know what, we've got to try making cocktails at home. Of course, you need vermouth. So vermouth sales increased considerably. And I'm sure some of these people decided to try it on its own, because we've been raving about it, saying, guys, you need to try vermouth. I think people don't realize what vermouth is. To them, it's an ingredient. But when you try and explain to them, actually, it's a wine. It's a type of wine. Oh, really? Okay. So you can drink it on sale. Yes, you can. So I think that's a really cool category as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Regine, what are you excited about? What are some of the trends, in terms of the wine world? What are some of the things which you've seen? I know to kind of, before I jump to you, what I've been seeing an increase in is hard seltzers. There's been such a boom in every wine or spirits company has got a hard seltzer version, alternative, whatever it might be. So what are some of the trends you see in the wine world, and how do we kind of push back on other categories?
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, some of the exciting things are more sort of like how people are consuming wine. So I think one is the online sphere being more and more important, and consumers buying wines online a lot more. We saw it during lockdown, and I think that trend will continue. We did see a lot of restaurants pivot to doing direct to consumer meal kits and wine deliveries too. And I think wine always had that like bias that, people would never want to buy it online because they want to see the bottle or talk to someone, similarly to how like luxury clothes were. And then Net-a-Porter came around and everyone started buying, designer clothes online. So that kind of disrupted the industry. And I think lockdown, for better or for worse, actually changed how we need to think about selling and our customers need to think about selling. And I think there's a lot of innovation with packaging as well. I think consumers are becoming more environmentally conscious, and more aware of their consumption patterns and how that impacts our environment. So I think the wine industry will need to look at that more closely and be more innovative in that field.
If I may kind of dive into that kind of packaging sustainability point, what are some of the things which we can do, because we're all aware that we need to do better. Everyone knows that we need to do better. We ship wines, for example, from New Zealand to the UK, a 1 kilogram bottle, sometimes heavier. So what are some of the things we can do?
Yeah, I know Jancis Robinson has a whole whole crusade about heavy bottles, and I think that's very key. Looking at how we can be more sustainable from our packaging point of view, but also Liberty Wines is carbon neutral as an importer distributor. So we basically every year do an audit of our carbon emissions, from everything to how we ship wines, distribute it to our office. And what we do with electricity and et cetera. And we offset our carbon emissions so that, we use those carbon emissions and invest them into carbon neutral products to offset those. So I think that's one kind of interesting way that companies, even though by nature our carbon emission, have carbon emissions, can actually do something to address that. And, being aware of consumption patterns, how we can minimize our footprint from a producer point of view is also really interesting too.
Oh, amazing. And when you say offset, are you talking about kind of planting trees and doing,
Yeah, so basically we work with a company that helps us analyze our carbon emissions. And there's a range of projects that are, I guess, carbon positive in terms of helping to offset those emissions. So we will choose projects that will improve that at the end of the day. So basically offsetting what we emitted into doing like tree planting or other kind of environmentally sustainable projects.
Thank you so much. I got a question from Sarah. Sarah, I'm going to come back to your question because it relates to that, but I want to kind of jump to Sukhinder. I mean, spirits have been traditionally known to come in heavy, glossy, punty, in fact, the heavier the better, right? Because it portrays this image of premium, of luxury. Right. Right. So what are some of the things which, the spirits and I also noticed, I moved houses in the last 18 months, and I realized that not every county or borough, whatever, recycles glass or picks up glass recycling from your front door. So what are some of the things which the industry could do better, in your opinion, to be more kind of carbon neutral and sustainable?
I think some of the spirits industry is looking at this as well. I think it always has to be led from the big boys, because, the small companies struggle. Mm-hmm. So we've already seen that Diageo with their Johnny Walker range, I believe especially Red Label and Black Label, are looking at paper bottles. Bacardi are looking at paper bottles. Exactly, yeah.
Wow, I wouldn't know. Okay.
Now, the thing is, for something like that to work, you need to be buying millions of bottles, you know. That's what I'm saying, you know. Small companies will have to follow in the footsteps of the big guys.
The bigger guys, yeah.
So the big guys have to do this. They need to prove it works to make it more acceptable and make it more, you know, bring those economies of scale, bring in economies of scale to bring those costs down. What I've found is, what I've heard is, which is really interesting, is a couple of the big companies are also going to stop putting their bottles into outer boxes, or also charging a premium for outer boxes. Got it? So that there is a definitive, if you're just drinking it, you know, buy it without. Of course, if it's a gift, look, you'll never be able to go away from it. So it's, again, trying to work out how you can do it. I think, look, if I look at it from a retailer's point of view, it becomes quite difficult as well. We have to do what we have to do. We'll definitely, you know, work towards this. But the thing is, you have to add extra SKUs, because you'll have to take one with boxed, one without box.
Without box, yeah. Suddenly it's two products you're dealing with.
Absolutely, becomes more complicated. But again, lots of companies are looking at, you know, thinner glass. I think the premium whiskies will always stay in heavy packaging and all the rest of it. But I think there will be a point where everyone will be forced, because soon as a couple of the big important brands start doing it, everybody will follow suit. You know, you can do what you can. I mean, my main business is retail, i.e. online. So we're very different to Regine's business, which is more wholesale. You know, so for us, we, you know, sell loads of bottles. So we take, you know, we get our cases of bottles, we unpack them, we put them on the shelf, then we have to pack them into fresh cartons. We have to wrap them in some sort of protective, protective packaging.
Bubble wrap, whatever
so they don't, absolutely, so they don't break. And, you know, again, we try every year, we review our policy, new materials are coming out. So we have to, you know, adapt to those. Of course, our cardboard is recyclable, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is, what a lot of people don't realize is there's also a lot of bullshit in the industry where people say, yeah, this is recyclable, that's it. And sometimes it's not. Because even when you look at cardboard, you know, when they say this is recyclable, even cardboard comes with a very thin layer of plastic.
Yes, I've seen those.
Visible layer of plastic. Because otherwise it would not be waterproof. Do you see my point?
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, there's a lot of things out there which we're told is X, but actually is Y.
Okay.
You know, but of course, everyone, I think, look, I've seen more change probably in the last 2 years than ever before.
Agreed.
I definitely would say it's going in the right way. You know, as a business, we recycle everything. All our rubbish is actually taken to a recycling yard, and they go through it bit by bit and separate it, which is really good.
Yeah.
All our plastic is taken out, put through this machine and compressed. All our cardboard is put through a compactor and, you know, tied up. So, again, you know, you can do what you can. You got to just keep plugging away at it and just try and improve each year.
Yeah, and I think if everyone does what they can, then we'll get to where we're trying to get to. It needs, you know, it needs a collective effort. It's not a case of, well, no one else is doing it, so I won't do it. But if we all kind of go, I'll do my bit, you know, whatever it might be, my 1%. But then, you know, economy of scales, I've mentioned, if we all do 1%, suddenly it's a significantly, you know, better, cleaner world to live in. Regine, a question came in from Sarah, which she mentioned smaller, thinner, you know, lightweight bottles. Can they keep the wine fresh? Would there be a detrimental effect? What are the thought process behind it? What are your...
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the material that you're talking about, whether it is glass or plastic / PET. It also depends on the product itself. If it's meant to be drunk immediately, then there's no problem in some ways of having materials that allow a little bit more oxygen ingress than, you know, wines that need to be stored for much, much longer. So there's so many variables. It is really kind of, it depends on the product, the consumption, etc. And, you know, I think your point is correct, is that we have to do everything that we can step by step and baby steps to address the issue.
And what I also read recently as well is that a lot of supermarkets are doing, you know, kind of bulk shipping, for their own ranges. You know, there's no point in, because from shipping point of view, I'm sure you both of you will agree, you're charged per weight. And so if you're shipping a container over here and 20-30% of that container weight is all bottles, you're not actually shipping a good. So we're seeing supermarkets, a lot of, and goes to Skinner's point about the big guys leading the way forward with this, with Tesco. I know they do some, you know, M&S and Waitrose as well, do a little bit of bulk shipping, where they bring the goods over here in huge bladders, and they'll bottle them here. And there's several advantages to bulk shipping, and, you know, we can Google that in our time, but it's just a small thing. And someone else mentioned that the outers on, I think it's Jenny in the chat, mentioned the cardboard outers, a real low-hanging fruit. As Sukinder again mentioned, the premium stuff is always going to be premium, right? You know, from gifts, you know, if you for example spending, I don't know, £1,000 on a bottle of whiskey, you think, God, the least you can do is put it in a presentable package. But for some of the more easy drinking, you know, high-end stuff, not high-end, high volume stuff, you kind of think, you know, on the £20, on a £20, £15 bottle of whiskey, we really need an outer cardboard on it. So there are several things which we could do to be better.
Alex, the other thing we're finding is, I think as the consumer becomes even more aware, you're going to find they're going to go for local. Yeah, with this craze of micro distilleries cropping up all over the UK. It's happened with beer. You've got microbreweries all over the UK. People are drinking local. That will definitely help, you know, reduce carbon footprint of moving things from halfway around the world all the way there. So people think, you know what, let's just drink local. I think with wine, it's definitely more difficult, you know, because people want
New
Californian wine, French wine, or Italian wine. So it's much more difficult. But I think things like gins and vodkas and, you know, even whiskey. Look how many whiskey distilleries are opening all over the UK. So you know, you definitely find that a lot of their target audience is local. People are very loyal, you know, they're very proud that, hey, this is the distillery from my
down the road,
county or my town. So I think that again will increase. You know, if you look at the US, there's tens of thousands of microbreweries. There's thousands of distilleries cropping up everywhere, and they're all doing well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Coming back to Regine, sorry. I'm just looking at some questions. So we'll kind of wrap up in about 5 minutes or so, giving us 15 minutes to chew through some Q&A. Regine, having kind of worked in the UK, out of the UK, and, you know, have an experience of both ends of the spectrum, how does the UK wine market kind of compare with regards to wine distribution compared to, I don't know, the States or any other parts of the world? Where do we sit? What are some of the things we're doing really well? And what are some of the things that you think we could definitely improve or learn from our cousins?
Yeah, I mean, compared to some markets, the UK has a lot of, I want to say freedom in terms of what people can do as a business. So for example, if an individual person, like I wanted to set up my own import business, I could do that. I could get approval, you know, from the government to do that, as you did, Max. You know, that's not possible in other countries. I mean, the US being kind of the big example of the more structured three-tiered system where there's a clear separation between importers, distributors, and wholesalers. So it really depends on the governmental regulations of your country. But in the UK, it's relatively easy to be your own kind of drinks entrepreneur when it comes to selling and importing wine or spirits, etc. I mean, of course, there's lots of layers to that, as Sukhinder mentioned, about bonding and the requirements of that. But, you know, if you have the cash to do it and the ability to manage your cash flow properly, you can do stuff like that. And I think, you know, we touched upon the challenges of the UK wine industry with Brexit primarily. And that is one of the big issues facing us now, and for the foreseeable future. But I also, for those people and other markets too, a lot depends on trade deals, geopolitics happening across the globe as well, and that will impact your import distribution capability. Trade wars between the US and the EU, for example, or China and Australia, that impacts the wine industry quite directly.
Yeah, because if they decide to turn up the taxes and the tariffs, which Sukhinder mentioned early, if suddenly your duty is going up or your import clearance is going up, that affects your bottom line, right? Affects your cost. And at some point, you got to make that decision on, am I going to eat this cost up, or can I? Is it even possible? Or am I going to pass that on to the end consumer? And,
yeah, I mean, the other benefit of the UK wine industry is we're a mature market. So, import and distribution in this country has happened for hundreds and hundreds of years,
Right.
So we're a mature market. We're also, there's also a lot of competition as a result of that. That in addition to being a relatively flexible market to set up a business and compete with anyone. So you see a lot of large importer distributors, you see a lot of small ones as well. And each one carves out a niche for itself, but competes with each other.
Interesting. Thank you so much. This being a career talk, it wouldn't be fair if we didn't answer some career related questions. Sukhinder, if someone was in school now, I don't know, 18, 19, 20, whatever it might be, school, university, what kind of courses, what skill sets, where should they be focusing on? Where should they be really one of the things I always found challenging about education is that what you learn in classrooms more often than not has no real impact in the real. It's kind of difficult to move them across. So what would you advise for people who are in schools or who are in universities and looking to move into the drinks industry in an importing kind of role? What should they kind of focus on, Sukhinder?
Interesting question. I think, look, I think everyone says this anyway, maths, I think is the most important subject on the planet personally, because it makes you think logically, makes you a puzzle solver. And that's what, especially logistics distribution is about. But to be fair, if you can do that, you can do anything, is what I strongly believe. I really do. I think geography would probably help, so you know where you're shipping from or shipping to.
Definitely. Which affects your cost, of course. Yeah.
But that's all I can think of. I think, look, going to school, you just want to balance. You want to learn a bit of everything. Everyone's different. Some people will love arts, and some people will love English, which helps you then analyze products and write about it eloquently. So it just depends what you want to do. But for me, maths is just very, very important.
Universal. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it doesn't matter what role you are in the industry, you must have the analytical brain, the analytical mindset, because fundamentally it's a selling and cost kind of thing. And there's no way you get around that, even if you're just writing labels or designing labels, it might be a case of this paper weight versus this paper weight. How much does this paper cost? If I might want to design a package that's got a glossy finish, that's embossed, that's got, bold, and you must think about, okay, if I add X, Y, and Z, how does that impact my bottom line? So that maths is absolutely fundamental. And then around it, you can kind of fit in your design, but I would say for my limited experience is that there is a role. The wine industry is a fascinating industry in that it doesn't matter what you studied at school. There's something somewhere in the supply chain which you can plug yourself into. Regine, did you want to kind of, drop one or two points on that?
Yeah, no, just to repeat what you said, you can be a generalist. You don't need to study anything specific to get into the wine industry or logistics, primarily. You can do all sorts, but yeah, you just have to have an interest in that. Mathematical ability is key, and to look at cost, to look at metrics, etc. But also, as we talked about before, being interested in problem solving, quick thinking, all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, case in point, for both of us, or all three of us, we've all done very different things to get to where we are.
There's a question that's come for you, Regine, almost specifically, well, actually specifically from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, how does Liberty go about identifying new products? What are some of the things which you think about when you are looking for a new product?
New products, just quickly, like our buyers are in charge of sourcing new products. And there's a couple things that they look for. One is, whether there's a gap in our portfolio currently that can be fulfilled by a product, a particular style, region, type of producer, price point, etc. And then, another big consideration is just quality. And from a very unbiased point of view, does it fit our criteria and standards for what we're looking for in a wine? That it's clean, it's correct, it meets
Stable,
the expressiveness that we want. And, our buyers get direct inquiries from producers asking us to taste samples. And also our buyers will go out into, the different markets and meet producers proactively and search for what they're looking for too.
Thank you so much. Sukhinder, we've got a question here from Noreen. Any thoughts on the no and low alcohol? And especially, that's really kind of poignant to you because you deal with spirits, which are high alcohol and high volume. I have seen a couple in the market, kind of no, zero, low alcohol. What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, very exciting. I'll be honest. I mean, we stock stuff. We're stocking a lot of low alcohol stuff. We're stocking a lot of non-alcoholic, you could say, adult soft drink type products because they're great mixers and they're great products when people don't want to drink alcohol, when they want to take a rest or they're driving or whatever. So I think it's a very, very interesting category. But my worry is we're going to be inundated with thousands of products. It just becomes a trend, a fad. And I always do feel that, the first 2-3 products on the market, which actually are quality, are the ones which lead the way. But that's not necessary. I think, look, we know the market is massive. Everybody drinks, non-alcoholic. That's what we do. But actually, when you look at it, I'm not a big sugary fan of soft drinks. But the problem is, you're thirsty or you go into a petrol pump, you look at that fridge, and I walk away. I don't buy anything, or I go away with the water because the choice is awful, absolutely awful. It's the same choice that was there 5 years ago, 10 years ago with a couple of extras, and that's it. So I think the market is hungry for it, but it's just getting the right products. Now, the thing is, of course, the barriers to entry are quite difficult because the big boys are hawks, Coca-Cola, like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whatever. When they see a competitor, they take them out. In some way or the other, they're waiting.
Either buy them,
or they buy them, exactly that. But I think the only positive thing to that, I would say, whereas before in the old days, everything was about price, today we have a premium sector, which I think is the big difference. So, people are willing to spend, £1.50, £2, £3 on even a soft drink if the quality is there. That's where I think, the big boys want to premiumize. They want to get a bit of that. But I think that the market is big and hungry and open. And I think it'll just get bigger and bigger. Even when we look at premium spirits, the market is just growing for premium spirits. I think people have got this thing, drink better, but drink less.
But drink less, yes, absolutely.
So, and everyone, we've got that new generation of drinkers, the millennium crowd, they're all very health conscious. They don't overdo it. They're very sensible. They're turning into veganism. They're turning into drinking very little. And I think it's a huge market. I think there's going to be some exciting products to come out.
Thank you so much. And that dovetails perfectly into Regine's point about the UK being a mature market, because that can only happen in a mature market to get to that point where you're thinking, right, we can step away from just flooding the market with everything that we can possibly make to actually let's make less or let's drink less, but let's make it better. Let's package it better and let's make it higher quality. And there's no problem with pushing the price up because, if there's a clear value to price to the consumer, the research show and the data shows that the consumer doesn't mind spending a little bit more if you can tell me that it's a better product, it's better packaged, it's sustainable, it's better for the planet and my body. Where do I sign, kind of thing? Regine, we've got a question here from Malcolm. I do apologize. We've got tons of questions. We've got about 10 minutes to go through them. We're not going to have time to go through everything. It's just a random, there are some questions which over the course of the last hour and a half, we have answered. So if they won't get answered again, so I'm just kind of going through the list and picking up one or two things. And Malcolm mentioned a great point, which we've all touched on. There are lots and lots of trade bodies. There are lots and lots of rules and regulations, either in spirits or wines or beers, whatever it might be. Where are some of what would you say is a source of anyone looking to import to be able to go and look out for these rules? Where are some of what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first, if you're in the UK, go to government websites. I mean, just Google it, gov.uk, HMRC, which is the Revenue and Customs Agency here. They will have a lot of guidance documents about how you can set up. So read that first. And then there's a trade body called WSTA, Wine and Spirits Trade Association. They have a wealth of resources on their website for free that you can look at. And also if you're a member, there's paid access to certain bits of content as well. But for those outside of the UK, I would follow that same advice, Google governmental regulation policies, and then most likely there will be a trade body that does kind of like either lobbying for your industry, for the wine or spirits industry based in your home country, and they will have a lot of information for you.
Thank you.
And talking to people, networking, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Again, comes back to our people skills. Before I started my company, I spent a lot of time, before I even imported my first pallet of wine, just going to people who've done it before, because they would have, there's no point in you following the same pitfalls that they did. Chat to people. When you did this, what are some of the challenges? If this is my business plan, what do I need to be looking out for? What did you get caught out by? And the wines and spirits industry, as you hopefully would find out up to our attendees, we're a chatty bunch. We really want to talk to people. And if we've made a mistake, we're not sitting in the background kind of, rubbing our fingers and hoping you also fall in the pitfall. We are happy to tell you, these are the challenges I face, and this is a mistake I kind of made. And so this is how you should avoid it. We've got a question from an anonymous attendee. If someone's starting from scratch, would you recommend that they focus on building a solid customer base first, or have a solid product first? Where would you strike that balance? Would you go customer first or product first? But it's a really interesting one.
I think, look, there's no point in having customers without product. So I think it has to be product first. I think, and then you just need to you need to decide, are you going to go with somebody who's already established and work with them, or you're going to do it yourself? Honestly, the challenges of doing it yourself are vast. They really are. Agreed. You know what? The advantage is you keep your costs down. If you have a good product, fine, you can talk to people, but you will never be able to reach a wide audience, a big audience. You'll always be limited. So, I've seen different companies. I've seen people who've taken a strategy and said, we're going to start with the bars. It depends on the product. And they built the brand in the bars. They didn't look at retail at all. And then they got called from retail to say, this is a great product. Can we buy it?
Can we have it? Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. So it just depends on the type of product.
Thank you so much, Sukhinder. And I'll just kind of echo that, because that's exactly what we started with the import company that I ran. I started with my strengths, like what's my background? Because there's no point. Yes, I sold to the on-trade for a little bit, but that's not really my strength. And my strength is working with supermarkets. So I approached supermarkets and said, hey, listen, what are you looking for? And what price point, what liquid, what do you want it to look like? And we went out and found products or made products or built products. And then did that for about a year. And then suddenly, we were getting calls from bars or calls from small wholesalers going, we've tasted this product that you make. Can you do something similar on a smaller scale for us? And then kind of growing out from there. Many people tend to want to go too big too soon. And end up into in muddy waters, but you have no idea what you're doing. Your strengths, your experience you can always fall back on those. So I would advise kind of starting with that, starting from what you're good at, and then morphing out into something else. Regine, we've got a question from Mark, which I'm sure you would have struck a Mark Chickley. I hope I'm saying that right. Who says, what are the pros and cons of exclusive agreements? I love that.
Exclusive agreements with producers, I'm assuming.
Yeah, a wine exclusive agreement between a producer and Liberty, for example.
Of course. Well, I mean, so the pros of that from both parties is that a stable long-term relationship that you can build. A big part of our business is building the market. That means building that customer base, as Sukhinder said, that is so important. Diversity of customers, geographic spread of them, you know, a sort of wide network of people to buy from us. So our producers will be looking to, when they are exporting to the UK, to be able to tap into our customer base. And if we have exclusivity between both parties, that allows them to focus on the UK market with us in a partnership that's very close. Of course, the cons of exclusivity, of course, is from a producer side, lack of flexibility. So, you know, if they want to use one importer distributor to target one channel, i.e. supermarkets, but that importer distributor doesn't focus on the on-trade as much, you know, they'd want to use a different partner for that. So, yeah, there's like those considerations. I think most of it is what the producer is trying to aim to do. Are they trying to build a long-term relationship? How much do they want to focus on different channel strategies within the market? Do they just want to leave it to the importer distributor to manage that for them? I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. Listen, we're running out of time. We could probably take Q&As for another half an hour to an hour, but we are, you know, it's been such a great chat. Thank you so much to both Sukhinder and Regine for giving up your time this evening and for chatting with us. And before we go, I just want to touch on that last question. I mean, kind of pros and cons of exclusive agreements. We've got both. We have some suppliers who we work with exclusively. I'm sure you both do. And we have some suppliers who we've got partial exclusivity for they exist, where we can go, you make 10 lines, for example. I want exclusivity on this 2 or this 3, and then with the remaining 7, you're allowed to do what you want. And then we've got some suppliers who, you know, we just buy products from them. And it comes down to, you know, basically it is a cost benefit thing. You know, what are the advantages of giving me all your products versus, you know, none of your products? Because, I mean, a short version is, you know, we work with a lot of supermarkets. And so if you've got the scale, we can move a lot of volume through us. But then we don't want to, you know, sell a product to, I don't know, a Tesco or an Aldi or a Lidl, and then you then sell it to someone else at a lower price, which then makes my customer's price look pretty silly and fundamentally makes me look pretty silly. So I need that control to be able to make sure that the price is even across the board. But anywho, thank you so much both. This has been so educational for myself. You know, I've learned so much from just sitting down and listening to both of these. I'll just hand over to Julia. Julia, are you there somewhere?
Hi, Max. Yeah, thanks for that. So educational, as you said. It's been really great to listen to everyone talk about the various roles, your experiences, certainly parts of the trade that I don't have much experience in. I think that's been fascinating, and the comments in the chat would seem that everyone has agreed as well. So yeah, just really appreciate your time. Sorry we didn't get to everyone's questions, but as you said, Mags, we could go on for another hour and probably still not cover them. But hopefully that's given people a lot of information to start with and some good places to continue looking for resources and information in the future. So with that, we'll say thank you very much once again to you for speaking to us, and thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. And we'll be back next month with another career talk on a different subject. So hopefully we can see you all again then.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.